Okay, I see some people have joined. Uh, Welcome. Thank you for coming. Um, it is 6 o'clock now, but we typically wait 5 minutes to make sure everybody who wants to come has come. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on. I hope you guys can hear me actually. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to put on some music, and at 6:05 we'll get started when Marin comes in and he'll take us away. See you guys then. Okay, it is 6:05. Yes, this will be recorded. It will be available on YouTube. Yep, thanks, Baha. You can come back to this. We'll also, or Marin at the end will be releasing the code basically that we're going to cover today. So you guys should have access to that as well. So I don't want to delay any further. Just gonna bring Marin on and he can dive right into the workshop. Remember, if you guys have any questions or comments, put them in the YouTube comments and we can read them and answer your questions throughout the workshop and also at the end. So whenever you guys feel comfortable, you can do that. And with that, okay. Hey, Marin.
Hey, Adi, thank you.
All right, I'll leave it to you.
Okay, great. So, hello everyone. How's everybody going? My name is Marin Maksutai and I'm the DSC Tech Lead here at the University of Arizona. We're going to talk today about MongoDB and how we can use this technology alongside our Node.js applications. So, let's get started. Okay, so first of all, what exactly is MongoDB? Well, MongoDB is a document-oriented database program, and it is classified as a NoSQL database, and it uses a JSON-like syntax. So, for those of you who have used MongoDB before, who have used more traditional SQL databases before, those basically use rows and columns, whereas MongoDB uses something called JSON, which is also used in JavaScript. And as you can see over here, this element over here represents a document. We'll talk about it a little bit later. And basically, the information is stored as a key value pair here in the document. As you can see, the first element is a field, and then there is a value. So two key terms which we got to discuss today. Basically, a document is the same as a row in a more traditional database. A document is a single entry in the MongoDB database, and as you can see, this one over here is a document. A collection is a group of similar documents, all grouped together in the database, and this is similar as a table in the more traditional databases. So what we'll be doing today is basically use some of the operations that are available to us in MongoDB, such as creating a new document, reading out of the database and extracting the information, updating an existing document, as well as deleting information from the database. But at this event, we'll just cover the two first ones, which is creating a new document and reading out of the database. So why choose MongoDB over many other options that there exist today? Well, it's very flexible. As you can see, it's very easy to integrate MongoDB in our applications. We're going to use Node.js today, but you guys can use it in every other programming languages that you might be using for web development. It's very fast and it's very easy to set up, as well as it's very scalable in a way that you can use it for small scale applications and also larger scale applications. And it's also very popular. It has a lot of documentation online for it. And as we said before, it uses a JSON-like syntax, which in combination with JavaScript is going to make our lives very easy. So what are we doing today? Basically, we're going to build a simple Node.js application, and then we will connect our MongoDB Atlas database to our Node.js application. We'll walk you through how to make that one from the Atlas website. We will then perform simple get and post requests to our database. What will we be needing today is obviously the Node.js application. It helps if you guys have Node.js already installed. And also you need to create an account at this link over here. It's going to be pasted into chat as well, which will enable us to create a MongoDB in the cloud. Basically, we will need three npm modules which come with the Node.js application. First one is Express, which will help us handle the different requests, the post and get requests from the users. Mongoose, which will enable us to connect our MongoDB database to our Node.js application. And lastly, Body Parser, which will help us to gain the information from the user into the backend of our application. So let's get started. First of all, you will need an IDE. I've chosen Visual Studio for this presentation today, but you guys can choose whatever IDE you like. And also open up an empty folder in your guys' PC. And also we will need now to create our project structure. So what subfolders will we need? The first one is called front. This one will hold the different HTML files that our application will have. For today, we'll only create one HTML file. The next one is called models. Now the models is where we will go and create our schema. I didn't talk too much about what the schema is, but it's basically the whole structure of our MongoDB database. Something very, very cool about MongoDB is the fact that we can create the structure of the database, what it will hold, what information will it store, the types of data that it will store, and we will do that in here in models and create a simple schema. Next up, we will create another folder called routes, and in here we will basically handle the get and post requests. Now, if you go into your preferred IDE, I chose Visual Studio, we will see that the folders that we just created are now displayed over here. The front, models, and routes. So first of all, let's create a simple index.html file. This will be our front end. And now in the index.html, we basically will need to create a simple form. So let's create the HTML file first. Opening up the HTML tag, then the body. And inside the body tag, we will need to create our simple form. So the way I thought about it was that we should create a form that lets the user purchase a different product. So for this form, we will need the user's first name, last name, phone number information, city, state, zip code, and then the quantity, the amount of the product that he wants to buy. So let's start first creating a simple form. Opening up the form. And then inside the form, we can create however inputs that we like. We will need a first name, which is basically an input of type text. And let's make it required so that the user has to enter his name every time. After first name, we will need a last name. Also make it required. Similarly to these two ones, we will need one for phone number. Also text. One for city. Another one for state. Now zip code. And lastly, the quantity. And now quantity is not a text type, but a number. Let's leave it like that. We'll go to it later. And also we will need to add another attribute to each of these fields called name. Basically, the name will help us later on and help us access the information after we have handled the post request. So for first name, let's call it first_name. Last name is similar, last underscore name. For phone number, let's call it phone underscore number. City. State. Number. And now, last thing that we need to do is specify the method that this form is going to have, which is a post request, and the action. Basically, in the action, we need to enter the path, the route that this method is going to use, and we'll use /purchase route. Don't worry about it too much right now. We will come to it later. But let's actually go and try out the HTML file. Just drag it and paste it over here. And we got a simple form structure. Now we need to enter a final field, which is the submit field. This is the button that will push the information into our backend. Save it, and then let's go, refresh. And we basically got a simple front end for our application. Now we will need to enter another file right here in the main directory in the root. Well, actually, let's go over here. In the root folder here, for mine it's called dscua. Let's create a new file, and let's call it app.js. If it enters one of the folders, just drag it and drop it here into the main directory, into the root directory. And we will now create our simple Node.js application. First of all, we will not enter any MongoDB-like code, but let's create just the bare bones of our application over here. So what we will need today, as we said, we'll need three npm modules. Let's create them. The one is called Mongoose, and we can include it by saying require. Let's call it let's say Mongoose. This is the name of the module. The other one is Express. Similarly, it's called Express. The other one is Body Parser, as we said. For Body Parser, this needs a dash in the middle, and then parser. And now let's create an instance for our Express application called app. Let's call up the class Express. And basically we have simple Express application, but we need to add some middleware. Basically, middleware are functionalities that our application may have, and to do so we need to pass them as parameters into the app.use function. So the first middleware that we will use for today is called Body Parser. Bodyparser.url encoded, and then pass this information as a parameter, a simple JSON-like file having one key pair value called extended true. What this essentially does is it enables us to get the information from the user into our backend in a way that our MongoDB application understands what the user is sending. Similarly, we will need another component from Body Parser called bodyparser.json. And now let's just open up our application into the port 3000. We can do that by using .listen function over here. .listen takes two parameters. The first one is basically the port number that we will listen to. So let's call it 3000. And the next one is just a function in itself, a callback function. Just like this. So what we will need to do is, let's go over here, let's type console.log just to try out that our application is working properly. And let's say server running at port 3000. It should be all, just the bare minimum of what we need. And let's go into our folder over here. If you see, there is a search bar over here, and we can say CMD. Now, it's obviously going to be different for Linux or, I don't know, Mac, but for Windows, we can basically do that and just spawn CMD window into our directory over here. It makes things much easier. So what we will need to do right now is actually download these modules that we have over here. We are saying that we want to have those modules into our application, but we don't already have them into our machine. So we need to press npm install and the name of the application, the name of the module. For example, let's call Mongoose first. And now it's downloading. Give it a little time. Okay, it should be done. Now, similarly, we will do this for the next couple of modules. npm install express. And then npm install body parser. Now all should be installed. Actually, let's remove this over here. We got it above. All should be installed right now into our system, and we just need to do node app.js. It's basically tell our function, our application, our Node.js instance into our PC that we want to run app.js. Let's actually increase the font size a little bit. Okay, so it's saying body parser require body parser. Actually, I haven't saved it from last time. Let's do it again. Okay, so it's saying server is running at port 3000. So this is good. Our application is up and running, and we can add some more components to it, such as the MongoDB database that we will just create. So right over here, make sure you guys got the MongoDB Atlas website opened. I think it should be pasted over here in the comments. I got my database already created, but just to show you guys, let's create a new project. You will need to do this every time you create a new project for yourself. You will need a project name. Let's call it MongoDB. Okay, create the project. This might take some time. So now that the project is created, we will need to create a cluster. Basically, this is our database that we'll access. And you got several options. Just go ahead and press this one, the rightmost option, which is free. And we'll need to select a server. I'm just going to select a random server, doesn't matter. The options over here don't need to be changed. Let's create the cluster. And as the cluster is getting created, as you can see, it takes 1 to 3 minutes to finalize. Let's go ahead back into our Node.js application over here. And let's first of all create a model. As we said, we will need a model for today's event. So let's create that. It's going to be a JavaScript file. Let's call it purchase model.js. This one will need the Mongoose component, because we will create a simple schema for our database. Mongoose. need to create the schema object, or excuse me, let's extract the schema class from this component, mongoose.schema. And now we can use this class to create our own schema, which we will later on use to update, to add a new document into the database or to extract the information from that database. So how can we do that? Pretty simple. Let's create a project, an object name called purchase schema. And let's create a new instance of the schema class, new schema. This one requires, as a parameter for the constructor, requires a JSON-like object. And over here, we will need to specify the different key value pairs that that our MongoDB database will accept. So first of all,
Hey, Maren, let me stop you for a moment. So we have a question in the chat from Baha. Can I host my database locally if I want to?
Absolutely, you can. Yeah, you can do that. And I was actually thinking of doing that today, but for time's sake, I chose this option because I think it's easier to just create a new database in the cloud and then use that URI for our application. But definitely you can do that, but you need obviously MongoDB installed locally in your machine, and then you can host that one as well. So that's perfectly fine. All right. Hopefully that answered the question. Let's go ahead and jump back into the code. Now the key value pairs need to correspond to this information over here that we have in our form. So first name, last name, phone number, all this information needs to be the same as the key value pairs. Let's first of all make first name. And this, the right side will require us to specify the data type that this field is going to have. For first name, I think a good data type is going to be string. Last name as well is going to be a string. Phone number is going to be a string as well. City, also a string. State is going to be a string. Zip code. Let's have it as string just for now. And quantity. We had that, if you guys remember, we had that as a number. So we will need to specify it over here as well. This needs to be a number. Okay, so we got our basic schema over here, but we will need to use that into our other JavaScript files. So we need to export that into the outside project for every file to be able to access it easily. How can we do that? Well, it's pretty simple, but we first of all need to initialize this schema that we just created. You can do that by typing mongoose.model and then passing on the name that this model will have. Just use any name, but I'm using purchase for the moment, and the type of schema that we would like to use. We have it over here. It's called purchase schema, and it's basically this structure that we just created. And what needs to be exported from this file is exactly this object called purchase. So let's do module.exports, and we need to set this field equal to whatever we would like to export on the outside. Let's call it purchase, because this is the object that we need to export to the outside. Now that we're done with the purchase model, we need to go ahead over here. I think it's almost time that our cluster is ready, and indeed the cluster is initialized. Now what we will need to do is create a connection between our MongoDB and our Node.js application. So let's type connect. I don't know if you guys can see it over here, this button over here. Let's press that. When it says add your current IP address, just allow access from anywhere, and let's add this IP address. This will make it accessible from everywhere. over here, this is very important. We need an admin for this database, and you can call it whatever you like, but I'll just call it admin. And the password is going to be test1234. Let's show it. Make sure this one is valid. If you make any typos, you need to change it later, so make sure. Just for now, the username is admin, and the password is test1234. All right, let's create this database user. And it's now created. Let's choose this connection method, and we will go with the second option over here, connect your application. Now, after we type connect our application, we will get this sort of a URL, but it uses the MongoDB MongoDB structure over here. We will need to copy this one out. Copy this one because we'll need to use it into our application right now. And let's get into our application. Let's create a field called MongoURI. Let's paste the string over here. As you can see, the admin is already put for us, but the password is not specified. We need to specify the password that we just created. For my case, it's test1234. Okay, perfect. So right now we will need to add some more code into this file. Remember, this is the app.js, the main file of our application. We'll need to create a MongoDB connection. And we can do that by just saying mongoose.connect. And this needs several arguments. The first one is the MongoURI that we just created. Second one, it's actually a JSON file, which will hold the different configurations of the database. Now, I'll just paste it over here. You guys can have a look at it. It's basically a key value pair that has all the different configurations that we want our MongoDB database to have. This basically is saying that we need to keep the connection alive, and we can have as many reconnection tries as we want in case something happens and we need to reconnect again. These two last configurations are needed in order to not have different warnings that MongoDB usually wants to throw at us. But even if you don't include them, it's not a problem. It's just fine. You'll just get a couple of warnings. So we need to put this one as a second parameter. Connection happens. And then the third parameter, similarly to app.listen, is going to be a callback function. Let's have that. Now the callback function over here takes two parameters, error and DB. Error basically gets thrown if something happens to our try to connect and we get an error. So if we get that error, just console.log it back to the console. If we don't get an error, let's paste a message over here saying that the connection was successful. Connected to MongoDB successfully. Okay. I think this is all for the moment, but okay, yeah, we need to add one more file actually, one more line of code over here. Down the mongoose.connect, we basically need to add this index.html and to host it into our Node.js application. We can do that by using app.use. This is another sort of middleware that our Express application expects from us to pass, and it's called express.static. This one is used to host static files such as our index.html over here. And what this will require us to pass as a parameter is the direction, the dir name, the directory of our project, but we need to add another string at the end, which is /front. /front tells the application that index.html is basically located into the front folder. So after we've done that, we will also need to handle a GET request. We can do that by using app.get. This GET request over here basically tells the Node.js application that we need to handle the root route. Basically, whenever the user enters for the first time, he will be granted by the index.html file. So the second parameter of this function is a callback function with parameters request and response. But we want to just immediately send out the file that we have in mind, which is index.html. We can do that by calling send file. This will send a file back to the user. But where is it located? It's located actually in their name plus and then front / index.html. Okay. We got quite a big amount of code right here. We need to stop our application and then restart it again to see if we have any sort of problems. Okay, so as you can see, this one is saying authentication failed. Let's have a look at cluster again. Actually, let's go over here. If you guys are experiencing the same thing, go to database access. As you can see, the admin is over here. If you typed maybe the password incorrectly, let's try it out, edit again, and type test 1, 2, 3, 4 one more time. Let's see if that one fixes it. It's deploying the changes again. Okay. Application again. This might take some time actually, so meanwhile this is still working. I actually had a different URI from back where I was trying it. We can try that one out. So let's test if the connection is now successful. And indeed it is. So please guys, make sure to have the correct password when you try to access your database. As you saw, I probably made a typo out there, and you need to be very careful with the username and the password. If they're not correct, you will get an authentication error. So now our application is working correctly. If you can see, there's this warning over here that gets thrown by MongoDB. Don't worry about it too much. This is normal. We can continue on with our application as usual. Okay. So now that we got the app.js ready to go, the purchase model, the last thing that we will do for today, or actually let's just try and access localhost 3000. And it's saying, oh, okay, we got a typo over here. Be careful with this one. You need to include a slash before the front in line 29 over here. Let's restart our application again. Okay, let's refresh. And as you can see, our index.html file is getting hosted by our Node.js application. All right. So we got the model, the app.js. We need one more JavaScript file for this for today's event. and this will be inside the routes folder. Inside the routes folder, we will need a file called purchase_routes.js. Now the purchase_routes will basically have our get and post requests functions, which we need to use to handle the get and post requests from the user. Let's go ahead. Let's create a router object to help us handle those requests. And we can have, you'll need to get the specific router class from the express module. We can do that similarly to app.js. Let's just require express over here. We will also need the purchase schema that we got over here. As you can see, we exported it earlier. Now we can use wherever we want in our application. So let's just type require dot to go to the main directory, the root directory, and let's call models, and then purchase model. As you can see, it's clearly detected by the IDE. Now we need to initialize the router. Let's just call it purchase router. Now let's initialize it right here. Now that we have the purchase router, it's very simple to handle the get and post requests. Basically just say purchase router.get for the get request, and the first parameter is a string, which will basically tell the application which route we need to handle. Now for our case, it's purchase route. And then it's also going to ask us for a callback function. But before we do that, let's actually create the post request first. And do it the same way as the get request. Just say post. The route is the same, it's /purchase. As you can see, it's also similar, actually the same to the one we used here in our form. So we need to use the same route, same as over there, and the function, which will be a callback function with request and response. Now, this callback function is a little bit different from the other ones that we use. This is going to be an asynchronous function because we are going to wait for the connection to finish and our changes to take place into the database. So basically, a synchronous function allows us to wait from certain operations to finish inside the function. Now that we got the post, we can create a new document, which is called new purchase, or whatever name you guys want to use. Let's await for the purchase.create function to finish, and this purchase.create function basically sends out all the information that we get into the MongoDB database and creates the new document in there. This will need, as we said, a JSON object. And the information in a JSON object, as we said, is going to be laid out as a key value pair. The key is basically first name, and then all of these fields that we have specified over here into our purchase schema. And then the value is going to be the information that the user sends us through this form. Now the question is, how can we access the information from the form into our backend application, into our backend of our application? It's actually pretty simple. This request over here holds all the information that we need. So we need to type request.body, and in the request.body, we can call these different names over here: first name, last name, phone number, etc. So if we say request.body.first name, we basically got the first name from the form. We will repeat this process, the same for last name, request.body.last name, and similarly for every field into our form. Phone number, request.body. Now make sure that the names align, because we over here specified it as phone underscore number. This is very important. Phone underscore number. City is basically going to be request dot body dot city. State is going to be similar, request dot body dot state. State is going to be request dot body dot, how we called it? Just called it zip. So request dot body dot zip. And lastly, the quantity is going to be request dot body dot quantity. Okay, so we basically got the information all laid out. We need to save it into our database, and we can do so by calling the .save function. This will basically save all the information that we have into the database. And once we finalize all of this creation of the new document, we need to redirect the user back to the root route for him to be able to send more information later. Now, obviously, this code might throw errors from time to time, so we need to catch that. It is better if we wrap all this code into a try-catch block. If anything happens, we just catch the other error. Let's just say console.log. We have an error saving a document. Should be enough. Okay, we also need to use this router back into our main application, which is called app.js. But to do so, we also need to export this module, export this purchase router object again. Same we did with our purchase schema over here. Similarly, module.exports equals purchase router will enable us to do that quite easily. Now let's go back to the app.js. Here in app.js, we need to include our purchase router the same way we included the modules before. So let's do that. Let's require the routes / purchase router, purchase routes. Now that the purchase router is here into our app.js, we can easily add it as a middleware to our Express application, app.use. We need to pass on the object over here called purchase router. This will basically enable our Node.js application to handle all those requests that we specify. We need a comma over here. Now it should be good. But let's just try and run it first, see how it goes, and we'll come back and do the get request later. So node app.js. As you can see, it's working properly. Our MongoDB database is connected. If we go over here, press refresh, we can add different information over here. I'm going to add my name. Phone number, we can add some random numbers. City, let's say Tucson. State, Arizona. Zip code, random numbers. And here we need a number. Let's add 3. Let's add submit. Okay, so we got, it says we have an error saving the document. Let's go ahead and take a look at our application again. Make sure these files over here are, these names over here are correct. First name, last name, phone is the same. Okay, it looks good. Still saying we have an error, so let's actually print out the error to see what's going on. And we try again. Let's stop the application, run it back. Okay, it's saying first name cannot read property of undefined. Okay, so as we said before, we need body parser. It seems like I've accidentally just removed those two lines before, after I pasted the connection options. So please guys, make sure to include them into your application. This basically tell the app.js that we are passing on the information from the front end to the back end, and it tells what type of information it is, so it's usually passed as a JSON-like structure. If we don't include those two lines, we might get a first name is undefined error. Let's try it out again. Hopefully this one is going to fix the problem. So we get the connection successfully. Let's go back, type submit. And as you can see, the information is submitted. We don't get any error over here. And we're again redirected into our root route. So we should expect that the application is running properly now. Let's go back into our MongoDB database. Again, the name is going to be different for you guys, but if you're seeing that the connection is now not zero, it's actually a good sign because we have a connection going on here and it's showing over there. If we go and look at the metrics, we see that the information has already been sent. And if we go into collections, let's go into collections, we can see that we got a couple of entries already sent in. The first two I think were my entries, and I tested out it earlier, and then probably the third one as well, and now the final one is the one that we just sent over here, and it's been sent successfully. As you can see, the MongoDB document over here also has a _ID field. We haven't done anything to our schema over here, but the _ID is already specified by MongoDB. It's like a unique key if you guys have used other databases before, and it's already put by MongoDB. It's always going to be a unique object. Now that the post request is working properly, let's finalize this event with adding the GET request as well. Similarly to what we did with the post request, the GET request is going to have a route, which is basically going to be the same, /purchase, and also a function, which is similarly going to have request and response parameters. Opening it up. And now, let's just do a very simple operation. Let's get all the information from the database. Let's call it purchase data. And let's await for the information to complete. Purchase.find. This basically tells the database get everything in there and send it out to the backend. The function here also needs to be an asynchronous function. And finally, the last line is going to be basically a response.json, because we're sending it in a JSON file, and we need to pass on this JSON object that we just received. Now I will show you how to access the information from our front end. So let's actually add another information just to make sure, just a random information. City Phoenix, state Arizona, zip code doesn't matter. Let's set a quantity of 2. We should expect for the information to just vanish, and we should go back to our localhost root route. Okay, we got an error. Or actually, I'm sorry, this was the one that we opened, which had localhost 3000. Let's try it out again. and the phone number, city Phoenix, state Arizona, zip code doesn't really matter. And we should expect to go back to the root route once the operation is completed. And indeed, we are back in the root route. Now, if we want to access all the elements of the database, let's call in the GET request. We can do so by saying slash and then purchase, which is our GET request route. It says cannot get request, and actually we need to restart the application because we had forgotten to do so. Okay, great. Let's try it out one more time. Say slash purchase. Okay, we're not getting anything. Okay. All right, so I should actually let's go to the purchase route, but we're not actually getting any information back from the database. So let's see. Purchase router. Oh, I'm sorry, I passed the wrong object. We should be passing purchase underscore data because that's actually our JSON file that we get back from the database. Let's restart one more time. It should be good to go. And let's try it out. And surely we get back all of the information that the database had collected up until this point. It's basically a collection of different documents. Each document has a unique ID, as you can see over here. And obviously this doesn't look very pleasing, but to make it more appealing to the user, you might use something that's called a view engine. Now we will not use that one today. It's a topic for another event, but basically we did what we wanted to achieve today, which was the post and the GET request and connecting the database with our simple Node.js application. To conclude this event, I had one more slide. Thank you everyone for listening today, and the code from today's workshop is located into this link. We'll paste it below in the comments as well. I also wanted to point to you a very useful resource that I found. It's the MongoDB manual. If you guys want to get more familiar with this technology, you might look more into the official MongoDB manual. That being said, thank you very much for listening, and yeah, if you have any questions, leave them down below.
Okay, thank you, Myron. That was a great workshop. So for people watching, I actually forgot to have the link to the GitHub repository on hand, but we'll send it in the Discord. So make sure you're, in the Discord, and we'll post an announcement. You'll see it there. Sorry about that. That's my bad.
Yeah, for sure. By the way, guys, make sure to join our Discord server. We created it basically this year, and it's a very good place to know all about our different events and announcements that we might have in the future.
Yep. And so we're basically at the end of time, but if you guys have any questions, last minute, we can answer them now. And after that, in about 15 minutes from now, you guys should get an email that says that thank you for attending, here's your member badge, all that good stuff. So, are there any questions before we wrap up? I see a here you go, but I don't see a question. Am I missing something? Uh, Okay. So I don't see anything else coming in. We'll stick around for 2 more minutes to make sure there's nothing else. But otherwise, thank you guys for coming. We're basically. Oh, there we go. Oh, that's the link. There we
Oh, okay.
go. Yeah, YouTube doesn't let you send the link. I don't know why it does that. It's just text. But we'll post it on Discord if you don't feel like copy pasting. That's fine. Okay. Thank you guys for coming. I don't think we have any questions. Remember, this is available as a recording. You just go to our basically our chapter page, the same place you RSVP'd, and after this event, there should be like a thing there that says, "Here's the YouTube video," so you can go there to see the video again. The code is available. Run through it again. I know we covered a lot of code today, but I thought it was a great workshop. And with that, I'm gonna drop us out of the video, and we'll see you guys at the next event. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, guys.